If you want to know the secrets of existence and the true meaning of life, I can't help you. But if you want some book recommendations, why not try reading the ones I wrote? If you're a fan of giant monster mayhem and anime weirdness, why not try Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1? If horror is more your style, you can't go wrong with The Occult Mafia. Those who enjoy their fantasy with a dark twist may be interested in Emerald of Maddox City. And if you're interested in shared universes, why not read all three? Hop on down to the description for links to all 3 books on Amazon. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video.
He must have somehow programmed himself to decrease in size.
Playmates sure has been having a hard go of it with their classic Godzilla line. At first they had to distribute Bandai figures to avoid being in breach of contract, then they released original figures that were just plain ugly. I don't normally turn down the chance to buy Godzilla merch without feeling some sort of regret, but one look at their Space Godzilla was all it took to convince me that it just wasn't worth it. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw the first images of their Jet Jaguar figure, and it looked surprisingly good. Admittedly, I was unsure about the built-in pose, but the quality of the figure itself seemed much better than previous endeavors. So I waited for it to appear in Walmart, since the deal was presumably still exclusive between the two companies. And I waited. And waited. And waited some more. Not only were there no traces of new figures on their online store or in the store, there were no traces of figures being resold by scalpers.
I was starting to wonder if the figure had been delayed or maybe even canceled. Then one day I was wandering through the nerd section at my local Target, not expecting to find anything I would impulse buy, and who should I see staring back at me but the grinning face of Toho's biggest legal problem. And he was the only one there, too. Providence had smiled upon me that day, so I decided to get him, and I now stand before you to give my assessment.
Many people have been anticipating this figure, especially since figures of him are so rare, and the only other new one on the market looks like this.
So let's find out if this figure eats sushi from a pail, or if he's the hero this line needs.
In terms of quality, this is one of Playmates' best efforts, outside of the Godzilla vs. Kong line. Rather than being made out of hard plastic and given a cheap paint job, Jet is made of vinyl like the classic Bandai figures. This allows the details to stand out. Of course, Jet is a robot, so he doesn't have as much texturing as other kaiju, but what little he has got is film accurate. The paint is also applied with similar care, with no bleed or mistakes that I can see anywhere. Best of all, he's properly scaled to the most Bandai figures, so he looks great standing alongside them.
Speaking of which, I did say earlier that I was a bit skeptical about the stance Jet Jaguar is sculpted in. I mean, sure, it looks dynamic, but I knew it would be limiting when it came to posing the figure. Or so I thought anyway. Turns out it doesn't have quite as big an effect as I initially assumed.
True, you can't move his legs at all, but you can move his arms, head, and waist. He can hold a few fighting poses, or even a running pose. Frame him just right and you can do even more stuff with him. The options are still limited, especially since his legs are static, but you do have more options than, say, this Ultraman Spark doll sculpted in a neutral pose.
Now, with all of that said, this figure has one gigantic flaw that's just impossible to ignore. For as good as Jet Jaguar looks, getting him to stand is a task in and of itself.
Jet's fighting stance is long, but it's narrow, and it also feels like the bottoms of his feet are ever so slightly convex. As such, he needs to be very specifically balanced in order to stand on his own, and even then, there's a strong chance that he'll topple at some point anyway.
Had his legs been positioned a little bit wider apart, that might have solved the issue, but as it currently is, the figure is unstable.
You either need to lean him against something or anchor him to the ground to keep him upright. I suppose there's a slim possibility that I just got a warped one, since that tends to happen when I buy collectibles, but I can't say for certain that that's the case.
It may just be a single flaw, but it's a pretty massive one. And it's a shame, really.
Jet Jaguar is a huge improvement for Playmates' classic Godzilla line in almost every other way, yet those improvements come with a tremendous, impossible-to-ignore problem. So in the end, I just don't know what to say about this figure. He's good, yet he's bad. He improves, yet he detracts. He looks better than the anime version's figure, but he is unable to stand on his own 2 feet.
I don't really know if I can recommend the figure or not, so I guess I'll just end the video here. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. You're still here? It's over. Go home.
If you enjoyed what you just saw, hop on down to the description for links to Patreon, DeviantArt, and all of our social media, as well as links for Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, and Emerald of Maddox City, 3 original novels I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.